In this show, you'll see the Chihuahuan raven, the great horned owl, the caracara, and Harris's hawk. There will be some repetition for different angles when the birds fly over.
Right now. This is our Chihuahuan raven. As I said, this is a grassland inhabitant of the Arizona-New Mexico border and into western New Mexico. We have two of them flying now, two Chihuahuan ravens. As you watch these birds fly, you'll see they have a very distinct flight pattern. They fly with it, and there's one more out over near Cat Canyon at the moment, flies with a distinct rowing motion. So when you see these birds in the air, if you see a bird flying with its wings like that, sort of rowing along, that's a raven. Now, Chihuahuan ravens are very, very similar to the common ravens that you see around here. They don't live in our community, the common ravens are the species that you'll see here. But the difference between a Chihuahuan raven and a common raven is almost entirely in size. Chihuahuan raven's about 2/3. Snag, you can see his distinctive characteristics. He has that very glossy black plumage, which is typical of ravens. That plumage is actually quite stiff and very aerodynamic and aids them in flight. In addition to that, you'll notice he has rather long legs. Ravens can walk, they can hop, and they can run. So they are able to move along the ground quite easily courtesy of those long legs. The other thing that First of all, they love to eat roadkill if they can find it, but in addition to that, they will hunt. They will go after lizards, they will go after insects, they will go after small rodents if they can capture them. Sometimes they'll go after other birds. That's rare, but they will do that if they get the opportunity to. They are also nest raiders. They'll go after the does not eat plant material. She only eats flesh. And she, for the most part, subsists on live prey. So what does she capture? Small rodents, lizards, maybe the occasional snake, something as big as a ground squirrel, or maybe a small rabbit. She weighs about 2.5 pounds. She cannot capture that great horned owls take household pets. That's simply not true. A 10-pound cat is more than a match for a 2.5-pound owl. Now she's what we refer to as a perch and pounce hunter. And she's perching right now. If she were out hunting, she'd be doing almost exactly what she's doing today. She'd find a perch, she'd sit on that perch, and she'd wait for her prey to come to her. Now when the prey does approach within striking distance, she will descend silently, swiftly, land on the prey, and she will crush it to death with her talons. Her talons can be used both to asphyxiate, in other words, to stop the breathing of any animal she captures, but also to penetrate. I don't know if you saw what she did, but I'll describe it for you. She was coming in horizontally, but at the last instant, she turned her body almost vertically. Latin America, and is a bird that is now resident in the United States, and it's where you might find him. Now, as he lands, you can see his unique characteristics. Doesn't look very much like a falcon, but he is. He's got a dark body, very dark brown to black plumage, long legs, which are yellow in the adult bird, white on his neck and breast, and a dark cap atop his head. He also has bare skin behind his beak. He's a very good flyer, as you can see. He has this ability to cover kind of a flat, glide pattern of flying, which you're watching right now. He has a wing. Crested caracaras will hunt from perches, just the way this bird is sitting right now. They also are fanciers of roadkill. Here come 3 of them right now. Here come 4 of them. So all 4 of our birds are coming in right now. I will discuss the fact that these birds live in family groups in more detail in a minute. We have 4 birds here for the very reason that Harris's hawks in our area tend to live in family groups. So seeing 3 or 4 of these birds at once is not unusual. So those are Harris's hawks. There are no other hawks in North America that resemble Harris's hawks, so very effective flyers. They can soar with the best of them. If they catch a rising air current like a thermal, which we refer to as a thermal, they can rise several hundred feet in a matter of a couple of minutes. They do not hunt from the soar. So these birds are not hunting when they're doing what they're doing now. They're doing something called advertising their territory, meaning that they get up in the air. Adults, these birds, I've mentioned their plumage. It's kind of the standard issue brown with russet on their wings. So young birds have heavily streaked crests. Now we're getting a little bit of squabbling between birds. That's not fighting. What these birds are doing is sort of reestablishing their position in the family hierarchy. And when birds hunt, when Harris's hawks hunt, they do exactly what they're doing right now. You see them going to ground? If that was a jackrabbit, they would be surrounding you. So we have simulated a Harris's hawk hunt for you so that you can see what it's like. They go to ground, they surround their prey, and that jackrabbit is cornered because the Harris's hawks will be coming at it from every direction. And courtesy of their long legs, these birds are pretty maneuverable on the ground. They can cut off an escape route for prey, and then they mob it. So, and we're hearing a little more squabbling, and then again, they're not fighting. What they're doing is sort of really, they don't do it, as I said, all the time, but they do it often enough so that we've observed the behavior. Now, I mentioned also that young Harris's hawks do not have the identical plumage of the adult birds. They have white streaks on their breasts. So if you happen to see a group of Harris's hawks, as I did the other day, and one of those birds has some white on its breast, that's a young bird. They will stay with the family for at least a year, maybe for a couple of years. They may even continue on as adults, especially if they're males. Females tend to go off at some point on their own and establish their own families. Neighborhoods, and they are very, very good at picking out a big tall tree and building a nest which will serve as their nest for years. They'll refurbish the nest every breeding season.
That was perfect. I got that too.
Will serve as their nest for years. They'll refurbish the nest every breeding
That was perfect. I got that too.
Years, their nest for years. They'll refurbish the nest every
That was perfect. I got that too.
They will prey as individual birds on prey as large as a ground squirrel, or maybe a small cottontail rabbit. So something weighing up to maybe a pound is fair game for our 2-pound Harris's hawk. When they hunt as a group, and they do hunt as a group, they can capture much larger prey, including prey as big as, say, an 8 or 10-pound jackrabbit. So it's a lot more efficient for these birds to hunt as a group than hunt individually, although they do hunt individually quite a bit of the time. Now, what's the benefit of living in a family group? Why do these birds do this? Well, there are 2 reasons. One is the reason I just gave, which is that they benefit mutually from being able to hunt as a group. The other is they raise their offspring communally. So the offspring bird. That this area belongs to us.
Thank you.
So they're as inapproachable as common ravens are, as I mentioned a little while ago when I try to photograph them. Hawks right out of the nest can you can practically walk up and pet them. So they're just very naive and untutored about the way of the world, and that's dangerous for them. Harris's hawks have an advantage. Young Harris's hawks get to learn from the adults in the family. So if an adult says, no, don't go there, the young bird learns from that. If the adult bird says, watch me, hawks hanging out there. What they will do, by the way, we just heard a little bit of vocalizing. I don't know if you heard that. It sounds a little bit like chalk on a blackboard. Harris's hawks do not have melodious voices. They don't sing. But they do make that squawking noise, which is one way of communicating. By the way, do not make that sound. They make a kind of beeping call, kind of a little whining call, which is basically to say to their parents, feed me, darn it. But the adult birds, if you were to drive around get a tremendous advantage from hunting communally. They don't do it, as I've said, all the time, but they do it often enough so that we observe the behavior.